She didn't knock. She didn't wait. She kicked open Judge Judy's courtroom door and screamed, "I own you!" The arrogance hit the room like poison. Everyone froze. 10 long seconds. Not a breath, not a whisper. Then, crack! Judge Judy slammed a file with such force the mayor's daughter visibly jumped. But Judy wasn't done. She leaned forward, eyes sharp enough to cut through the air, and said, "You think this is power? Sweetheart, this is only the beginning." What happened next didn't just shake the courtroom. It shattered every illusion of privilege, power, and protection. And trust me, the ending is so unreal, people still argue if it actually happened. The door was still vibrating from the impact, its metal frame groaning as if it needed a moment to recover. Judge Judy didn't flinch, not even a blink, but the gallery snapped into silence like someone had cut the sound out of the world. Sabrina Hail stood there, chest heaving, chin lifted like she expected applause. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, their harsh white glow washing over the chaos Sabrina had dragged into the room with her. She stood in an expensive white suit that didn't belong anywhere near a small claims courtroom, tailored, spotless, and expressive in the way only money could buy. "I don't belong with you people." Judge Judy leaned back slowly, her chair whispering against the polished floor. The camera caught the slight tilt of her head, the same look she gave people right before their arrogance expired. The bailiff stepped toward Sabrina, but Judy raised one hand. "Leave her," Judy murmured. "Let's see how she behaves when no one moves out of her way." Sabrina smirked, mistaking calm for submission. "I'm here for my case, but I'm not waiting like some—" She flicked her wrist toward the audience. "Random." Her heels clicked sharply as she walked toward the front, every step echoing too loudly, like she thought sound itself owed her volume. Plaintiffs and defendants shrank back, creating a clear path she didn't earn but demanded. At the plaintiff's table sat Luis Ramirez, hands clutched so tightly the knuckles whitened. He didn't look up as Sabrina passed. He couldn't. For months she'd hovered over his life like a threat waiting to happen. Judge Judy's gaze dropped to his trembling fingers, then back to Sabrina. "State your name for the record," Judy said. Sabrina smiled like the request was beneath her. "You already know who I am." "I didn't ask what you assume," Judy replied, voice steady as a razor. "I asked your name." A ripple of laughter flickered through the gallery, faint, nervous. Sabrina's eyes snapped toward them with such venom the sound died instantly. "My name is Sabrina Hail," she said it as though announcing royalty. "And your relation to the mayor?" Judy asked. Sabrina leaned forward, planting her manicured hands on the defendant's table. "He's my father," she said proudly. "Which means," Judy cut in before she could finish, "I asked relation, not resume." The gallery bit back their reactions. Luis finally lifted his eyes, and in them sat a mixture of fear and fragile hope, the kind that comes from believing maybe, just maybe, someone finally sees what's been happening. Sabrina noticed. "You can stop pretending you're scared of me," she snapped at him. "We all know how this ends." Judge Judy's face tightened, barely, but enough for the camera to catch. "How does it end?" Judy asked softly. "When someone abuses power they don't actually possess?" For the first time, Sabrina faltered. Just a flicker, a microsecond of confusion. Judy saw it. The audience felt it. Luis held onto it. Judge Judy leaned forward, her stare pinning Sabrina in place. "Tell me, Ms. Hale, who told you power exempts you from consequence?" The question hit the room like a dropped match, and Sabrina had no idea it was already burning through her lies. Sabrina straightened, chin high, as if Judge Judy's question were nothing more than an annoying notification she could swipe away. But her voice, sharp, entitled, trembling with something unspoken, sliced through the room before Judy even finished inhaling. "You don't get to question me." A collective breath vanished from the gallery. Even the cameras seemed to pause, their tiny red lights blinking slower, capturing the moment arrogance tried to stand taller than the bench. Judge Judy didn't look offended. She looked interested. A predator observing a creature that hadn't yet realized it was prey. Sabrina flicked her hair back. "You must not understand how things work. My father is irrelevant," Judy interjected, crisp as glass breaking. "This courtroom is mine, not his." The shift in air was immediate. Sabrina blinked fast, caught off guard by the interruption. She wasn't used to being cut off. She usually did the cutting. Luis sat quietly at the plaintiff's table, eyes lowered, thumb anxiously rubbing the edge of a crumpled notepad. Every time Sabrina exhaled sharply, he flinched, a small movement, but Judge Judy noticed. She turned her gaze toward him. "Mr. Ramirez," she said gently, "you brought this case. Do you feel comfortable explaining what happened?" Sabrina scoffed loudly, rolling her eyes. "Here we go." Luis swallowed, voice low, almost apologetic. "She threatened me, said she could end my contract with the city if I didn't give her what she wanted." "And what was that?" Judy asked. Luis hesitated, glancing at Sabrina, a glance filled with months of intimidation, one he'd been trained to fear. Sabrina leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Tell her, Luis," she taunted. "Tell her how you messed up the job and then blamed me." Luis's shoulders tensed. Judge Judy caught that too. In a slow, controlled movement, she turned fully toward Sabrina. "Ms. Hail, I didn't ask you to speak." The tone was ice, quiet but lethal. Sabrina bristled, jaw tightening. "I have a right to defend myself." "And you will," Judy replied, "when I address you, not when you interrupt the person you allegedly threatened." The word allegedly hung in the air like a challenge. Luis looked up, a fragile, cautious rise of his voice. "She emailed city officials using, well, a government letterhead and her mother's foundation," the audience murmured. Even the bailiff, stone-faced and still as wallpaper, tightened his jaw. Sabrina laughed, an ugly, brittle sound. "Oh, please, it was just a warning. He was causing delays. People like him don't understand pressure." Judge Judy's brows lifted. "People like him?" Sabrina blinked, realizing too late the trap she'd stepped into. "You know, regular people. People who can't, who don't," she stumbled, cheeks coloring. "Forget it." "No," Judy said softly. "I think we all heard you clearly." Sabrina's mouth snapped shut. The courtroom seemed to inch closer, waiting, listening, almost tasting the tension. Then Judy lifted her hand. "Bailiff," she said, eyes locked on Sabrina, "bring me the contract." Sabrina's face drained. "No, wait," she sputtered. "There's no need for—" But the bailiff was already moving toward the door. Judge Judy folded her hands, the room trembling under her silence. "We're going to see exactly what Ms. Hail considers pressure," she said. And for the first time, Sabrina's confidence flickered like a candle under a storm. The bailiff hadn't even closed the door behind him when Sabrina lunged forward like she could outrun the truth. "No one touches my paperwork," she barked, voice cracking louder than she meant it to. The gallery watched her, not with fear this time, but with dawning recognition. Her power wasn't real. It was borrowed. Judge Judy didn't move, didn't blink. Her stillness was more powerful than Sabrina's shouting could ever be. "Sit," Judy said. It wasn't a suggestion, and for the briefest second, Sabrina actually obeyed, knees bending before her ego caught up, making her jolt upright again. "I don't need to sit," she snapped. "This whole thing is ridiculous. He's lying. You're letting him lie." Luis shrank at the accusation, fingers tightening on the notepad until it buckled. Sabrina saw it and smiled. The kind of smile someone practiced in the mirror. Judge Judy's eyes drifted to Luis's hands, then to Sabrina's smirk. She filed that reaction away like ammunition. Seconds ticked by in a dense hush, broken only by the soft whir of courtroom cameras. Finally, Luis lifted his voice. "Ma'am, I didn't lie. She emailed me from her mother's foundation account using a city seal." He swallowed. "She told me officials were reviewing my work and would shut me down if I didn't sign an amended contract." "Amended?" Judy repeated. "Meaning changed?" Luis nodded. "Drastically," Sabrina scoffed. "If you knew how to do your job correctly, maybe you wouldn't need supervision." "Supervision," Judy echoed, letting the word simmer. "From you?" Sabrina's chin rose. "My family oversees multiple city projects. I'm involved." "Involved," Judy said. "Or interfering." The gallery murmured. Tiny, electric reactions rippling outward. Sabrina's eyes narrowed. "Same thing." "No," Judy replied. "Not the same thing at all." Before Sabrina could respond, the door opened and the bailiff returned, carrying a thick folder with the calm care of someone holding live explosives. Sabrina instantly stepped toward him. "Give me that," she ordered, reaching out. The bailiff didn't flinch. "Ma'am, this goes to the judge." Her fingers curled mid-air, recoiling as if struck. Embarrassment flashed across her face, quickly replaced by an angrier, harder glare. The bailiff handed the folder to Judge Judy. Judy set it down gently on the bench, the weight of it echoing through the room. "Sabrina," she said, eyes fixed on her, "if this file contains what Mr. Ramirez claims, you may want to stop talking." Sabrina folded her arms tightly, nails biting into her sleeves. "Those papers won't prove anything. Anyone could have made them look like that." Luis looked at her, a quiet breath shaking out of him. "You made them look like that," he whispered. Judge Judy opened the folder. Inside, a stack of contracts, city seals, authorization stamps, some real, some clearly altered. The overhead lights caught on the embossed surfaces, highlighting the inconsistencies. Judy didn't look up yet. She was absorbing, reading, understanding. Sabrina watched with a restless panic she couldn't hide. Her foot tapped, her jaw locked. Her breaths came short, shallow, and angry. She knew what was in those documents. She just didn't expect to see them in Judge Judy's hands. Judy finally raised her eyes, holding Sabrina in a gaze that could peel paint. "These documents," she said slowly, "should not exist." And the moment the words left her lips, every ounce of Sabrina's confidence drained from her face. Judge Judy lifted the first page slowly, as though touching something toxic. The courtroom leaned in with her, every pair of eyes tracking the subtle widening of her stare. Sabrina shifted in her seat, the panic she'd been choking down finally surfacing in her breath. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, but the room felt silent. Too silent, the kind where tension becomes a living thing. Judge Judy held up the altered contract, the city seal warped by a clumsy digital paste job and signatures that didn't match any official she recognized. "This," Judy said, tapping the page with one finger, "is fraud." Sabrina's spine stiffened. "No, it's not. It's a draft, a rough version," Luis flinched. "That's the version you forced me to sign." "I didn't force you," Sabrina hissed. "I persuaded you." Judge Judy's gaze cut sideways. "Persuasion doesn't normally involve forged governmental seals, Ms. Hail." A few members of the gallery exchanged looks, shock mixed with the kind of satisfaction that comes when arrogance finally trips over itself. Judy pulled out another sheet. This one had an authorization stamp. Except the date was several days before the meeting Sabrina claimed she wasn't present for. Judy held it up. "According to this timestamp, you approved Mr. Ramirez's amended contract on a day you testified you weren't even in the city." Sabrina's mouth opened, then closed again. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed, searching for a story that didn't exist. "I might have the date wrong," she murmured. "No," Judy said firmly. "Paperwork doesn't get confused. People do." Luis watched the exchange with a mixture of relief and disbelief, as if seeing the sun after months underground. Judy continued flipping through pages, each one worse than the last. A letter from the Department of Urban Compliance threatening to revoke Luis's permit unless he agreed to Sabrina's terms. A memo confirming a disciplinary investigation into his business. A stamped approval for Sabrina's version of the contract, signed by an official who had, according to the margin note, been on medical leave for 8 months. Judy placed the final sheet down and looked at Sabrina with a chilling calm. "These documents," she said, "are a pattern, not an accident, not a misunderstanding." Sabrina's jaw trembled before she caught herself. "You don't understand. I was trying to help him. He was messing things up." Luis inhaled sharply. "You ruined me. You cost me my contract. I lost everything." "Oh, please," Sabrina snapped. "You exaggerate to make yourself look like a victim." The gallery recoiled. Even the bailiff's expression hardened. Judy leaned forward. "Mr. Ramirez, is there anything else I should see?" Luis hesitated, then nodded. "There's a voicemail," he said quietly, "where she threatened me." Sabrina's face drained. "No, absolutely not. That's private." "Private," Judy repeated, "not when it pertains to coercion." Luis reached into his folder with trembling hands, pulling out a printout, a transcript. He handed it to the bailiff, who carried it to the bench. Judy scanned the lines. Her eyes stopped, her brows lifted, her hand closed around the paper like she was holding a smoking gun. "Ms. Hail," Judy said, voice lowering, "this transcript contradicts every word you've said in this courtroom." The gallery froze, and Sabrina, finally, looked afraid. Judge Judy held the transcript like a lit match, its edges trembling with the weight of what was written. Sabrina stared at it as though it were a bomb someone else had armed, but she knew exactly who had pulled the pin. "Play it," Judy commanded, and the courtroom exhaled all at once. The bailiff stepped toward the audio console, inserting the small device with a soft click that echoed far louder than it should have. Sabrina shook her head rapidly, too rapidly, her composure finally cracking under the pressure of her own creation. "You can't," she whispered, voice barely audible. "That message it wasn't meant for court," Judy finished. "I agree. Threats usually aren't." A ripple of astonishment coursed through the gallery. Someone in the second row covered their mouth. Another leaned forward until their shoulder nearly touched the seat in front of them. The audio clicked to life with a small burst of static. Then Sabrina's voice filled the courtroom. Not the polished, photo-ready city princess tone she used moments earlier, but a slurred, venomous growl. "Luis, listen. I'm done waiting for you. You sign the new contract or I'll shut your whole operation down. You hear me? I'll bury you. My dad fixes things. I don't need permission." Luis closed his eyes, shoulders rising with the memory of fear. Judy watched him, not with pity, but with recognition. This was a man who had been bullied into silence. The recording continued. "I swear, if you make me look stupid again, I'll ruin you. I don't care if it's legal or not. People like you don't get choices." The last line cracked the room. Even Sabrina seemed stunned to hear her own voice echoed back at her in such raw ugliness. "That wasn't," Sabrina stammered. I had been drinking." "That doesn't change the words," Judy said. "I didn't mean them like that," Sabrina insisted, but her voice trembled, losing its usual precision. "It was just frustration. He kept messing things up." "Ms. Hale," Judy interrupted, "you threatened to, let me quote, bury him and shut his whole operation down. Do you consider that frustration or coercion?" Sabrina's gaze darted around the room, searching desperately for someone, anyone, to confirm her version of reality. No one moved. Not even her own reflection in the glossy table could save her now. Luis shifted slightly, hands clenched in his lap. "She called me 5 more times that night," he said quietly. "I didn't answer." Judy moved the transcript aside. "Sabrina," she said evenly, "why do you sound intoxicated on this recording?" Sabrina froze. Her lips parted. No words emerged. Her silence was louder than the voicemail itself. The gallery watched her unravel, the false confidence draining from her posture, leaving only the exposed truth. She wasn't powerful. She was reckless, and for the first time, she knew it. Judy leaned back, studying her with clinical precision. "This isn't entitlement," she said softly. "This is learned behavior." Sabrina blinked, quick, sharp, defensive. But behind her eyes, something flickered, something that almost resembled fear. Judy folded her hands. "Tell me, Ms. Hale, who taught you this was acceptable?" Sabrina's breath hitched, because the answer wasn't about her at all. The last echoes of Sabrina's voicemail were still dissolving when Judge Judy lifted her hand, silencing even the breath of the room, but the look on Judy's face said it clearly. That recording was only the beginning. "Play the next file," she ordered. A second audio file? Sabrina's face drained the instant the bailiff's finger hovered over the playback button. "There's no next file," she sputtered. "There shouldn't be. Luis, you weren't supposed—" But she stopped mid-sentence, realizing how much she'd just revealed. Judy didn't miss it. She never missed anything. The bailiff pressed play. Static, then a faint background hum. Traffic, maybe. A car door, a shaky inhale, then Luis's voice. "Ms. Hale, I'm begging you. I can't sign this. It's illegal." Sabrina's reply cut through the audio like a blade dipped in ice. "Illegal is relative. My family decides what gets approved." The gallery gasped. Even the stenographer looked up, fingers hovering over the keys. Sabrina dropped her face into her hands. No. That's taken out of context." Judge Judy lifted one eyebrow. "I haven't provided context yet." The recording continued. "Luis, please. I'll lose my contract. I'll lose the whole business. Sabrina, then lose it. Maybe people like you shouldn't run things anyway." Those last words hit Luis harder than the first threat ever did. He lowered his eyes, shame briefly eclipsing his anger. He'd kept this call buried for weeks, too frightened to share it with anyone. Now the world heard it. Judy's voice softened. "Mr. Ramirez, this must have been terrifying." Luis nodded, his throat tight. "I didn't sleep for days. Every time my phone rang, I thought it was her again, or someone she sent." Sabrina shot upright. "I never sent anyone. That's ridiculous." Judy's stare snapped to her like a whip. "Sit down." Sabrina sat, not because she wanted to, but because something in Judy's voice carved through her bravado like a surgeon's scalpel. The audio played its final seconds. "Sabrina, sign it by morning or you'll be done. My mother and I will make sure of it." This time, the room didn't gasp. It sank. Deep, heavy. Judy turned off the device herself, the click echoing like a gavel. "Your mother," Judy repeated. Interesting choice of words. Sabrina's lips parted, instinctively ready to lie, but her throat locked up. Her eyes darted downward, then sideways, then back to the bench in a frantic search for an escape route that no longer existed. The mask was gone. Privilege had peeled away. All that remained was a young woman trembling under the truth she'd finally been forced to confront. Judy leaned forward, voice quiet but merciless. "Ms. Hail, the arrogance I can handle, the threats I can adjudicate, but dragging your mother into this..." Sabrina's breath caught. She knew exactly what was coming. Judy's eyes sharpened. "That tells me this corruption didn't start with you." And Sabrina froze, because the one person she never expected to face was suddenly standing in the shadow of her own words. Pause a moment. If you were sitting in that courtroom, would you believe this was entitlement or something she was taught from birth? Sabrina's breath came in sharp, uneven bursts, like someone waking from a nightmare in a room already filled with witnesses. Judge Judy's words still hung in the air, pointing to a truth Sabrina had spent years avoiding. And suddenly, without warning, Sabrina snapped. "It wasn't just me," she blurted, voice cracking through the courtroom like a misfired spotlight. Her chair screeched backward as she stood, palms flat on the table, knuckles white. "My father, he always told me to handle problems before they became problems." The gallery stirred. Luis didn't move, but he blinked hard, realizing this was the first real fracture in Sabrina's armor. Judge Judy remained perfectly still. "Be very careful," she said softly. "Blaming others doesn't absolve your actions." Sabrina shook her head, more frantic now. "You don't get it. If something threatened our family's reputation, I was supposed to fix it. His words, his rules." "And forging documents was your method?" Judy asked. Sabrina winced. "I didn't think it mattered. My parents always said rules bend for people who work hard enough to earn them." Luis flinched at that line. Judy didn't flinch, but her jaw tightened. Sabrina kept going, like a dam bursting faster than she could patch it. "My father would yell at me for being too soft. My mother told me that embarrassing the family was worse than lying. They taught me to do whatever I had to do, to keep people like..." She paused, eyes sliding to Luis. "Like him in line." Luis's face fell. But he didn't look away this time. He shook his head, voice cracking slightly. "Why? Why was I the one you needed to control?" Sabrina's eyes welled, not with crocodile tears, but something raw, unpracticed. "Because you didn't listen," she whispered. "I asked for changes. You said they weren't legal. And I knew if I went back to my parents with that, they'd say I failed." Luis blinked. "You ruined me because you were afraid of disappointing them?" Her lips trembled. "You think I wanted this? You think I liked threatening people?" She swallowed hard, voice thinning. "No. But I didn't know what else to do. I thought that's how power worked." Judy studied her, a long, silent observation, like watching a tower collapse one cracked brick at a time. "This," Judy said finally, "is what happens when fear dresses itself up as arrogance." Sabrina looked down at her shaking hands. She wasn't trying to hide anymore. She couldn't. Luis exhaled slowly, the first real breath he'd taken since Sabrina stepped into the room. But there was no satisfaction in his expression, only exhaustion. Judy nodded gently toward him. "Tell her what this cost you," she said. Luis looked at Sabrina directly for the first time. "I lost the biggest contract of my life," he said quietly. "My workers lost hours, my reputation tanked, my bills doubled, and every night I replayed your threats in my head like they were warnings from a higher power." Sabrina's lips parted. Her voice barely escaped. "I didn't know." "You didn't care," Luis replied, not harsh but true. Sabrina sat down heavily, like the weight of her own history finally crushed her shoulders. But then, her expression hardened, something twisted beneath the vulnerability. "And you still don't understand what it's like to be me," she muttered, bitterness resurfacing like a reflex she couldn't suppress. The gallery stilled. Even Judy straightened. Judge Judy leaned in, eyes narrowing, not at the anger, but at the fear behind it. "Then enlighten us, Ms. Hale," she said. "What exactly is it like to be you?" And Sabrina's answer would change the room. Sabrina opened her mouth, ready to deliver the confession no one expected, but the courtroom door creaked open before she could speak, slicing her moment in half. Every head turned, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. A woman stepped inside, not rushed, not flustered, not apologetic. She moved with the quiet grace of someone who'd been choreographed her entire life. Tailored navy suit, flawless posture, a polished calm that made even the bailiff straighten on instinct. Gasps whispered through the gallery like wind through leaves. Luis's shoulders locked, breath suspended. Sabrina went still. Judge Judy watched the newcomer approach the bench with the cool precision of someone cataloging a threat. "State your name," Judy said. The woman offered a tight, elegant smile. "Evelyn Hail," she replied, voice low and butter-smooth. "I'm Sabrina's mother." "Of course she is," the room seemed to say in unison. Evelyn turned to Sabrina, placing one manicured hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Sweetheart," she murmured, "you shouldn't be here alone." Sabrina didn't meet her mother's eyes. Her jaw worked, her breath thin, her spine rigid under the weight of that perfectly placed hand. Judge Judy recognized the dynamic instantly, control disguised as comfort. Evelyn faced the bench again. "I apologize for the disruption, Judge." She didn't look apologetic. "I came because I heard this matter was escalating unnecessarily." Luis shifted, bracing himself. Judy folded her hands. "Unnecessarily?" Evelyn nodded, eyes full of feigned concern. "My daughter is young, emotional. She may have exaggerated in her communications with Mr. Ramirez, but she certainly didn't threaten him." Luis exhaled sharply. Evelyn continued. "Surely you can see he's embellishing. It happens often in cases involving high-profile families." The gallery bristled, an audible ripple of disbelief. Judge Judy's gaze sharpened. "What I've seen," she said, "are forged documents, threats, and 2 audio recordings." Evelyn offered a serene smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Recordings can be manipulated, and paperwork, well, mistakes happen." "Mistakes," Judy repeated, tasting the word. Evelyn stepped closer to the bench. Not enough to be disrespectful, but enough to test boundaries. "Judge, I think we both know the real issue here is a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by someone seeking attention." Luis's eyes widened. Sabrina's eyes dropped to the floor. "And Judy?" Judy didn't blink. "Mrs. Hale," she said quietly, "I'm curious." Evelyn tilted her head. "Why?" Judy continued. "Does your daughter sound terrified of you every time she mentions your involvement?" Sabrina's breath caught, a tiny sound, but revealing. Evelyn didn't flinch. "My daughter's dramatic," she said simply. "She always has been." The courtroom watched the exchange like an unfolding explosion. Judy sat back, lips tightening. There was something cold in Evelyn's tone, something familiar, something she'd heard once before. In a sealed ethics complaint from years ago. A case Judy was never allowed to pursue because someone powerful shut it down. Her eyes narrowed, recognition flickering like a camera flash. Evelyn Hail. That Evelyn Hail. Across the room, Sabrina sensed a shift but couldn't name it. Luis only felt the tension spike, the air thickening with something unspoken. Judy leaned forward, voice low, dangerous, unshakable. "Mrs. Hale, I know exactly who you are." Evelyn's smile froze. Judy's next words cut through the courtroom like a blade. "And I remember the last time your name landed on my desk." Evelyn Hail, impossibly, lost her composure. Evelyn Hale's smile faltered, just enough for the cameras to catch it, just enough for the gallery to feel it. Judge Judy's words didn't just hit her. They recognized her. The room seemed to tighten around Evelyn, as if the air itself knew a mask had slipped. Evelyn recovered quickly, too quickly, regaining that polished composure she wore like armor. "Judge," she said lightly, "I'm sure whatever crossed your desk years ago was a misunderstanding. My family has always been the target of political attacks." But Judy wasn't looking at her anymore. She was studying Sabrina. Sabrina sat frozen, eyes flickering between Judy and her mother, as if seeing both in a new, terrifying light. Judy turned back to Evelyn. "I recall your name tied to a series of complaints regarding city contracts, ethics violations, intimidation of local businesses." A hush fell over the gallery. Louise stiffened, breath catching. Evelyn didn't blink. She only tilted her chin in a silent, practiced display of superiority. "Records sealed under confidentiality," Evelyn said. "I hope you're not suggesting you intend to revisit them." "I don't revisit," Judy replied. "I remember." Sabrina closed her eyes as if bracing for a blow she'd known her whole life. Evelyn released a slow, poised exhale. "My daughter is overwhelmed, emotional. You're interpreting her distress as guilt." Louise couldn't stay silent. "She threatened me," he said quietly. 5 times. She forged documents. She said her family could bury me. "And you expect us to believe that?" Evelyn turned toward him. Voice dipped in icy condescension. "You're a contractor who lost a job. Isn't it convenient to blame someone important?" The gallery reacted, sharp gasps, incredulous murmurs. Louise flinched. The same humiliation that had kept him silent for months threatened to swallow him whole again. But this time, Judge Judy stepped in. "Mrs. Hale," Judy said sharply, "you will not belittle him in my courtroom." Evelyn's eyebrows lifted, feigning innocence. "I'm merely stating that people exaggerate, especially when seeking compensation." Sabrina stared at her mother with a quiet horror. It wasn't disbelief. It was recognition, because she'd heard that tone all her life. Judy leaned forward, her voice razor cold. "Mr. Ramirez didn't come here for money. He came here for truth. Something you and your daughter seem to wield conveniently, but never authentically." Evelyn straightened, irritation cracking through her veneer. "Judge, I came here to protect my daughter from unfair treatment." "Unfair?" Judy asked. "You walked in the moment the evidence became undeniable. That's not protection. That's damage control." A ripple of tension spread through the gallery. Sabrina swallowed. Her voice was barely audible. "Mom, please." Evelyn didn't look at her. Not once. Instead, she kept her eyes locked on Judy like two swords crossing. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," Evelyn said quietly, dangerously. Judy's reply was immediate, "And you have no idea how many people said that before realizing it didn't matter in this courtroom." Sabrina's breath caught. Louise stared at Judy with new hope. Evelyn, finally, unmistakably, lost her composure. Judy tapped a finger on the bench. "Bailiff," she said calmly, "bring me every communication between Mrs. Hale and city officials regarding this project." And for the first time, both Hales looked afraid. "If you were Judge Judy here, would you press deeper, or is this already enough to expose the truth?" Evelyn didn't panic. She recalibrated. And the sudden chilling shift in her demeanor made the entire courtroom feel like it had stepped into the opening move of a very old, very practiced war. Evelyn smoothed a non-existent wrinkle on her jacket, lifted her chin, and transformed from concerned mother into something far more calculated, an image sculpted for cameras, headlines, voters, and damage control. "Judge," she said smoothly, "let me clarify the situation before we spiral into unnecessary theatrics." Judy's eyebrow twitched. The gallery held its breath, not because they believed Evelyn, but because they recognized a woman who had spent a lifetime manipulating public perception. Evelyn placed a gentle hand on Sabrina's back, her voice dropping into a syrupy, sympathetic register. "My daughter has always been passionate, perhaps too passionate. When she believes a project is failing, she becomes emotional." Sabrina stiffened. This wasn't protection. This was spin. Luis clenched his jaw. She threatened me. That's not passion. Evelyn didn't look at him. In fact, she looked past him, like he was an unfortunate smudge she refused to acknowledge. She addressed the room instead. Mr. Ramirez is understandably upset, but emotions distort memories. It's quite common for individuals to misinterpret assertiveness as aggression. Luis's hands shook, his face flushing with the humiliation she wielded like a blade. Judge Judy's voice cut through the air. Mrs. Hale, your daughter's words were recorded. Evelyn nodded, undeterred. Yes. And audio can be spliced, edited, rearranged. We all know technology can be weaponized. A murmur spread through the gallery, half outrage, half disbelief. Sabrina stared at her mother as if seeing her anew. Mom, she whispered, that's not what happened. But Evelyn squeezed her arm sharply, tiny, subtle, controlling. Let me handle this, she murmured without turning. Judy watched the interaction with cold clarity. The courtroom had shifted again, not because Sabrina was dangerous, but because her mother was. Mrs. Hale, Judy said, you're suggesting a hard-working contractor manufactured evidence to frame your daughter. Evelyn delivered a perfectly timed sigh. I'm suggesting he misunderstood her. A young woman under pressure trying her best while he panicked and exaggerated. Luis swallowed hard. Exaggerated? He'd barely slept, nearly lost his business, and now the woman responsible was rewriting reality in real time. Sabrina's face twisted, not in anger, but in recognition. She'd been here before. This was how her mother erased problems, reframe, redirect, reassign blame. Judy didn't blink. Mrs. Hale, the documents in this file contain forged seals and falsified signatures. Evelyn's smile didn't break. They're prototypes, drafts, misprints. Perhaps my daughter handled them incorrectly. She's inexperienced in city procedures. Sabrina inhaled sharply. Hurt flickering in her eyes, Luis stared at the floor. Judy leaned forward, voice low and devastating. Or perhaps she learned this behavior from you. The room froze. Evelyn's smile finally cracked, a hairline fracture, but unmistakable. Judge Judy, she warned, I think you're stepping into dangerous territory. Judy's reply cut the air in half. Dangerous for whom? Sabrina's breath caught, Evelyn's facade trembled. Luis finally looked hopeful. And the gallery could feel the truth boiling beneath the surface. Bailiff, Judy said, her voice like a drawn blade, bring me Mrs. Hale's emails. Evelyn didn't move, but her eyes finally showed fear. The bailiff stepped out to retrieve the emails, and the silence he left behind felt like a countdown. Sabrina's fingers twitched against the table, small, frantic movements she couldn't hide anymore. Judge Judy watched her, not with anger now, but with something far more piercing, certainty. Sabrina swallowed hard, visibly struggling against the collapse rising inside her like a tide she couldn't outrun. Her mother remained stone still beside her, jaw locked, watching Judy as if she could hold the courtroom together by sheer force of will. She couldn't. Judy leaned forward. Ms. Hale, she said softly, you're shaking. Sabrina stiffened. I'm not, she whispered, though her voice trembled with every syllable. Evelyn rested a hand on her daughter's wrist, a gesture that looked affectionate but landed like a command. Composure, Sabrina, she hissed under her breath, but Sabrina jerked her arm away. It was tiny, instinctive. And it shattered 30 years of family dynamics in 1 second. The gallery reacted, quietly but undeniably. Evelyn's eyes flashed. Sabrina, she said sharply. No, Sabrina's voice cracked. No more. Judy didn't interrupt. She watched, waited. Sabrina licked her lips, chest rising and falling unevenly. You want the truth? She said, louder now. Fine. I didn't do this alone. The room froze. Even the cameras seemed to steady themselves. Evelyn inhaled sharply. Sabrina. You told me to keep the project on track, Sabrina said, voice wobbling. You told me not to let him embarrass us. I said no such thing, Evelyn answered too quickly. Sabrina shook her head, tears threatening but not falling. You said, and I remember it exactly, failure reflects on family. Fix it before it spreads. She pointed at Luis without looking at him. I thought he was the problem. Luis leaned back, stunned. Evelyn's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Sabrina, you will stop right now. But Sabrina kept going, words tumbling out faster than she could control them. You always said image is everything, that people can be handled, that we don't lose, ever. And when the city officials hesitated, you said you'd call them. You said they listen when Hales speak. The gallery gasped. Evelyn's mask faltered. Sabrina, enough. Judy raised a hand. Let her speak. For a moment, Sabrina looked like a child again, raw, small, terrified of disappointing the woman beside her. But then she forced herself forward. I forged the documents, she admitted, voice breaking. I used the letterhead because I thought that's what you wanted. I thought it would fix everything. Luis's breath caught. A quiet, painful ache swelled in the room. Evelyn shook her head in slow denial. You're misremembering. No, Sabrina's voice finally cracked into a shout. I did all of it because of you, because I thought love meant doing whatever it took to keep you proud. The gallery was silent. Pain flickered across Sabrina's face, messy, human, nothing like the polished arrogance she walked in with. Judy's voice slipped into a gentler register. Ms. Hale, did your mother instruct you to sabotage Mr. Ramirez's contract? Sabrina stared at the floor, hands trembling, lips quivering. Then, barely a whisper. Yes. Evelyn exploded out of her chair. That is a lie. But Sabrina kept talking, rushed, shaking, unstoppable. You said we needed that property. You said Luis didn't deserve it. You told me to clear the path so you could acquire it for your foundation. Luis's eyes widened. Judy's expression darkened like a storm-gathering weight. Evelyn's voice sharpened to a blade. Sabrina, stop speaking, now. But Sabrina didn't stop. She broke. I only did it because you told me to, she cried. I thought it was normal. I thought politics worked like that. A choked silence slammed down over the courtroom, and Judge Judy sat back slowly, connecting every thread. Judy's voice cut clean through the air. Sabrina, are you telling this court your mother ordered the sabotage? Sabrina lifted her tear-filled eyes and nodded. Evelyn Hail froze mid-breath, as if her daughter's confession had turned the floor beneath her into thin ice. The gallery didn't move, didn't blink, every person waiting to see whether the Queen would fight or fall. Judge Judy's stare was merciless. Mrs. Hale, Judy said, voice slicing through the tension, your daughter just testified under oath that you directed her to sabotage a lawful contract. Evelyn's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her fingers trembled for a single traitorous second before she forced them still again, back into the elegant poise she'd mastered decades ago. That's absolutely untrue, she finally managed, her tone trembling beneath its veneer of authority. She's emotional. She's overwhelmed. She's being manipulated. Manipulated by who? Judy asked. The man whose life you nearly destroyed, or the truth? Sabrina sank into her chair, shoulders caving inward, eyes shining with the weight of what she'd released. For the first time, Luis looked at her not with anger, but with a complicated, heavy pity. The bailiff returned, holding a stack of printed emails. Not thick, only a dozen pages, but the kind of dozen pages that could topple an empire. Evelyn's eyes widened, her mask fracturing just a little more. The bailiff handed them to Judy, who began reading silently, each page turning like a countdown. The gallery leaned in, Luis's hands squeezed into tight fists. Sabrina watched with shaking breath, as though witnessing someone else's life unravel in front of her. Judy placed one email on top, reading aloud. 2. Director of Urban Development. Subject, Project Reallocation. We need the Ramirez proposal frozen until I re-evaluate its suitability. Do not inform him yet. Luis flinched. He had never known a thing about that delay. Evelyn stepped forward. That was merely an inquiry. Sit, Judy ordered without raising her voice. Evelyn stopped instantly. Judy picked up the next page. 2. Compliance Office. Flag the Ramirez bid. I want to shift the property review to the Hale Foundation's committee. Luis sucked in a breath. That's why my file disappeared, he whispered. But Judy wasn't done. Next page. 2. Sabrina Hale. Handle the contractor issue. Make sure he understands the consequences of stalling. The last thing we need is him speaking publicly. The words hung in the air like smoke. Sabrina's face crumpled. "That's the email," she whispered. "That's the one that made me do it." Evelyn surged up from her chair. "You misunderstood my meaning." "Mrs. Hale," Judy snapped, "every email in this pile shows a pattern of interference, intimidation, and abuse of office." Evelyn tried to speak but only managed a choking sound, half denial, half fury. Judy continued, relentless. "Your daughter forged documents because she believed that's how you operated. She threatened Mr. Ramirez because she learned that intimidation from you. She acted illegally because she thought she was following a family blueprint." Sabrina's tears finally spilled, not out of fear of punishment, but from the collapse of years of conditioning. Evelyn tried one last desperate defense. "I did this for the city, for the community, my foundation." "No," Judy said, voice cutting through her like winter air. "You did it for power, and now you will answer for it." The gallery bristled with electricity, the moment crackling with long-awaited justice. Evelyn slowly sank back into her seat, the reality finally taking shape around her like a cage. Judy leaned forward. "Mrs. Hale, did you or did you not use your public influence for personal gain?" Evelyn didn't speak, because for the first time in her life, she couldn't. Sabrina didn't look at her mother. She couldn't. Because for the first time, she wasn't afraid of disappointing Evelyn. She was terrified of recognizing herself in her. The courtroom felt quieter now, different. Not the tense, fragile silence from earlier, but something heavier, like the moment after a storm when debris is still falling from the sky. Sabrina folded her hands together, staring at the way her fingers shook. She'd curled those same fingers around power for years, authority she never earned, respect she never gave, consequences she never believed would come. Now she couldn't keep them still. "Sabrina," Judge Judy said, her tone steady but no longer sharp, "look at me." Slowly, like a child stepping out of a hiding place, Sabrina lifted her eyes. "What you did was wrong," Judy continued, "but I need to understand something. Do you know why you did it?" Sabrina opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Her throat tightened around a lifetime of rehearsed excuses, polished smiles, and lessons carved into her by a family that prized image over integrity. Luis watched her carefully, his anger softened into something unmistakably human. Pain, recognition, maybe even forgiveness, eventually. Sabrina swallowed hard. I thought if I didn't fix the problem, I'd be the problem," she whispered. "My whole life, everything was about keeping my parents proud, not slipping, not cracking, not embarrassing them." Her voice wavered. "My mother used to say, 'Weakness is a luxury the Hales can't afford.' So I learned to hide everything, fear, confusion, guilt. I learned that you keep control by any means necessary." She looked at Luis, directly this time. "And I treated you the way I'd been trained to treat anyone who got in the way, like you didn't matter." Luis lowered his gaze, not in shame, but in the quiet ache of hearing the truth he'd suspected, but never understood. Sabrina continued, words trembling loose. "In my house, apologies weren't real. They were strategies. You said sorry only if it fixed the story, never because you meant it." A single tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. Judge Judy let the silence settle, letting Sabrina's own words echo back to her. "You're not your mother," Judy said. Sabrina flinched. "You learned her behavior," Judy continued, "but you are not her, not unless you choose to be." Those words hit Sabrina with more force than any reprimand could have. Her breath hitched, shoulders trembling under the weight of a truth she'd avoided for years. Luis leaned forward, voice quiet but firm. "You hurt me," he said, "more than you realize, but I see you're not the same person who walked into this room." Sabrina's eyes widened, her breath catching. It was the first kindness she'd received today, the first she may have received in years. Judy nodded slowly. "That's the beginning of accountability, Ms. Hale. Not excuses, not blame. This." Sabrina inhaled shakily, wiping her face with the back of her hand. She whispered, barely audible, "I'm sorry." Luis nodded once, small but real. But before the moment could settle into something healing, Evelyn finally turned toward her daughter. "You should be ashamed of yourself." Sabrina stiffened, the old fear snapping back like a reflex. But this time, she didn't bow her head. She didn't apologize. She didn't look away. She held her mother's gaze and didn't blink. Judge Judy tapped her gavel lightly. Apology isn't accountability, and this court isn't finished. Because next came the consequences neither Hail woman could escape. Judge Judy straightened a single sheet of paper, the crisp sound slicing the room into absolute stillness. Sabrina braced herself, shoulders tight, breath shallow, while Evelyn refused to breathe at all. This was the moment both of them finally realized. Consequences had arrived. "Ms. Hail," Judge Judy said, her voice steady but heavy with finality, "this court is now moving into remedies." Sabrina's head bowed, not out of defiance this time, but acceptance. Her palms pressed flat to the table, fingers trembling as she prepared herself to hear exactly what she had earned. Evelyn, however, leaned forward sharply. "There is no need for—" Judy lifted one finger. Silence. Evelyn closed her mouth, jaw tight enough to crack a tooth. Judy turned to Luis. "Mr. Ramirez, do you have an estimate of how much this sabotage cost your business?" Luis inhaled, steady but emotional. "Yes, Your Honor. Between the delays, lost project funds, and repairs, around $42,000. Sabrina let out a tiny broken exhale, as though the number physically struck her. Judy nodded. "That will be addressed." Evelyn shot upright. "Absolutely not. My daughter is responsible for the damages," Judy cut in. "Because she forged documents, she issued threats, and she attempted to coerce a contractor using influence she did not possess." Sabrina's eyes glistened as she whispered, "I'll pay it." Evelyn snapped her head toward her. "No, you will not." But Sabrina didn't look at her mother. She looked at Luis. "I did this," she said quietly. "Not her, not anyone else. Me." It was the first time she had ever spoken without an audience in mind. Judge Judy took a breath, the kind that carried years of experience, disappointment, and hope all at once. "Sabrina Hail," she said, "you will pay Mr. Ramirez the full amount. You will also issue a public correction to every official your forged documents misled." Sabrina nodded slowly, shoulders shaking. "And," Judy continued, "you will complete a 12-week ethics accountability program approved by this court." Sabrina froze, surprised, relieved, overwhelmed all at once. Then Judy turned, slowly, deliberately, toward Evelyn Hail. The courtroom tensed. "Mrs. Hail," Judy said, voice sharpening, "your actions go far beyond this case." Evelyn inhaled, eyes narrowed. "You have no jurisdiction over me." "No," Judy said calmly, "but ethics investigators do." The gallery gasped. Evelyn's composure wavered, finally fully, cracks spreading across the mask she'd held together with political polish. Judy continued, relentless. "This court will forward every email, every communication, and every document involving you to state authorities, your foundation's practices, your interference in city contracts, your intimidation of staff. All of it will be reviewed." Evelyn's chest rose in a sharp breath, fury and fear wrestling beneath her controlled exterior. "You don't understand," she whispered. "This could ruin—" "Yes," Judy interrupted. "It could." Sabrina stared at her mother with something new in her eyes. Not fear, not admiration, understanding. This is who raised her. This is who she became. This is who she refused to be anymore. Luis closed his eyes, releasing a long-held breath, the weight lifting from his shoulders for the first time in months. But then Evelyn leaned forward, voice barely above a whisper, trembling with a venom she could no longer disguise. "This isn't over." The room chilled, not because anyone believed her, but because denial always fights hardest when power slips away. Judge Judy didn't flinch. "It is," she said, and the finality in her voice slammed the door on the Hail family's legacy of intimidation. Judy's gavel hovered, waiting for the last truth to settle. "The final ruling," she said, "comes next," and the room held its breath for justice's final word. "Tell me honestly, do you think Sabrina deserves a second chance after everything she admitted, or should accountability be absolute, no exceptions?" Judge Judy lowered her gavel, but she didn't strike it, not yet. This moment demanded breath, demanded clarity, demanded truth spoken without trembling, and every soul in that courtroom leaned in, waiting for justice to land. Ms. Hale, Judy began, voice steady enough to anchor the room. Stand. Sabrina rose slowly, her movements fragile but intentional. Her chin wavered, her hands trembled, but for the first time, she stood without her mother's shadow propping her up. The courtroom light softened along her face, revealing a young woman stripped of facade, privilege, and illusion, left only with what remained when excuses ran out: accountability. You committed forgery, issued threats, and intentionally sabotaged a man's livelihood, Judy continued. Those actions cannot be erased by apology, but they can be followed by reparation. Sabrina nodded, tears slipping down in quiet acceptance. You will pay Mr. Ramirez $42,000 in damages, Judy said, her tone firm but not cruel. You will issue written corrections to the officials you misled, and you will complete an ethics rehabilitation program with proof of progress submitted to this court. Sabrina exhaled shakily, but there was no resistance, no bitterness, only resolve. I understand, Your Honor, she whispered, and I will. Luis watched her with a conflicted softness in his eyes, not forgetting, not excusing, but somehow recognizing the enormous shift standing in front of him. Judge Judy turned toward him. Mr. Ramirez, she said, you showed remarkable courage in coming here today. You were intimidated, threatened, and cornered by power misused, and yet you stood up for yourself and for the truth. Luis swallowed hard, nodding with quiet gratitude. Then Judy shifted her attention to Evelyn Hail. Mrs. Hale, she said, and the courtroom froze all over again. Your involvement in this misconduct extends beyond the scope of this civil matter. I am forwarding every document and communication you touch to state ethics investigators and the producers of this program. Evelyn stiffened but didn't argue this time. She knew better. Her empire of polished influence had cracked open under the weight of her own actions, and there was no controlling the narrative now. This, Judy continued, is no longer about optics. It is about integrity, something your position demanded and your conduct destroyed. Evelyn looked away, her composure fractured in a way even Sabrina had never seen. Judge Judy inhaled, a slow, deliberate breath that settled decades of experience into a single moment. This courtroom, she said, does not bend to fear. It does not bow to power, and it does not excuse wrongdoing because of last names or bank accounts. Justice is not swayed